this book, the second chant. It's a section which discusses the chanting of Hare Krishna. It is entitled The Perfection of Chanting, and I thought because chanting is something that we do every day, it's a good topic to reflect on. And also for persons who come for the first time, also maybe relevant to hear about what we do and how we do it and so on. I'll read the section and then we will have some discussion and there will be time for questions, answers, comments. The perfection of chanting. The key to successful chanting is to carefully avoid sin altogether. So basically, to live a pure lifestyle is very helpful for chanting. If we don't behave purely in our daily habits, then it becomes more difficult, the chanting, and to get the most of it. By chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, a person is freed from all reactions to his previous sins. And if he avoids sinning again, he very quickly becomes an advanced devotee. His mind becomes fixed upon the lotus feet of Krishna. If we regularly chant Hare Krishna without offense, we shall remain free from all sinful reaction, and our attachment for the Supreme Lord in devotional service will increase. Once there was an argument between Thakur Haridas and an ignorant so-called Brahmana concerning the power of the holy name of Krishna. In an assembly of Vaishnavas, Haridas Thakur said, "Not only those a person become situated on the spiritual platform, Brahmabhuta, by offenselessly chanting the holy names of the Lord, but his dormant love of Godhead manifests and he becomes liberated automatically." The Brahmana protested, "Don't exaggerate the effects of chanting in this way. One becomes liberated only after performing many austerities and penances. But you say that simply by chanting Hare Krishna, one becomes liberated. If that is not the case, I shall certainly cut off your nose." Haridas Thakur replied, "If chanting Hare Krishna does not produce liberation as a byproduct, then I shall cut off my nose." The members of the assembly, witnessing this argument, became extremely agitated upon seeing the great offense the Brahmana had committed against Haridas Thakur, and they immediately expelled the offender. Shortly thereafter, the Brahmana contracted leprosy, and his beautiful nose melted away. This incident is narrated in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. There are 3 stages of chanting the holy name, and perhaps here we can evaluate ourselves. How are we chanting? We can consider chanting with offense, chanting as a liberated person, and chanting with full love of God. These progressive stages of chanting are like the ripening of a mango, An unripe mango tastes sour, but when the fruit is fully ripened, it tastes very sweet. Initially, we may be reluctant to chant, but when we become liberated, the chanting is so sweet that we cannot give it up. In this regard, Srila Rupa Goswami has composed a beautiful verse describing the sweetness of the holy name of Krishna. Tunde tanda vinira dimbitante, tundavali laptaye, karna kroda kadambini katayate, karnar putepyas priham, chetta prangana sangini vichayate, sarvendriyanam kritim, no jane janita kijate, amritai, krishneti varnatvaye. I do not know how much nectar the two syllables Krishna have produced. When we chant the holy name of Krishna, it appears to dance within the mouth, and we then desire many mouths. When the name of Krishna enters the holes of the ears, we desire many millions of ears. And when the holy name dances in the courtyard of the heart, it conquers the activities of the mind, and therefore all the senses become inert. These are the symptoms of one who is on the liberated platform of chanting. At that stage called prema, one has a great relish for chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But this stage is attainable only if one follows the regulative principles. We have to be cautious. After being cured of a diseased condition, we first enter the After being cured of a disease condition, we first enter the convalescent stage. If we do something wrong, the disease may return. It is not that we become liberated and can do anything and everything. At all times we have to stick by the regulative principles of devotional life. I found this section while preparing for a seminar on chanting the holy name of the Lord. 1 week ago, I was visiting a center in Valencia, and there is no temple in that city in Spain. And devotees, they live at home, they practice Krishna consciousness while living what we will call a normal life, living in society, working, taking care of their children and their responsibilities. Without a place like here in Dublin, there is this center as a support center. They meet at home, and their main concern was how to improve their chanting, because sometimes they find it difficult. Not that chanting is difficult, but the quality chanting may be difficult. And to keep it up while we have to take care of so many responsibilities in daily life, that may be difficult. There is a schedule for working, then the children need to be taken care, school, children to school, pick them up, and so many things to be done. So sometimes there seems to be little time for chanting, or maybe difficult to achieve a quality level of chanting. Those who are able to manage to chant, sometimes because of so many worries, it becomes difficult. So I found this section interesting while doing some research for that seminar, because it summarizes very nicely 3 levels of chanting, which we may be relevant for us to reflect on them, to see where we are at in chanting, or where I am at this point of my life, because sometimes we're chanting and we have periods where we are up, and other periods we go down. So it's like a journey, and a journey may have different experiences, different situations. Sometimes we have seen how somebody can be chanting for so many years, for 20 or 30 years, and then come to a point in a mature age where some desires from the youth period of life come back again. And we want to, for whatever reason, there is something in human psychology where we want to revive and to do things we were doing when we were young. And some of these things may not be conducive to good chanting, may not be conducive to a pure spiritual lifestyle. So this is just an example of how challenges may be in life. So it is not, it doesn't go on in one direction, but it is like a spiral. Yadunandana Maharaj will give this example of this spiral. So we're going up, but we go back to similar places. So we need to reconsider where am I situated? And then very consciously make choices in life in order to continue progressing on the direction we want to go, if we want to advance spiritually. So the first advice is to chant Hare Krishna. Doesn't matter what, always chant Hare Krishna. This is what Srila Prabhupada will say. Sometimes he will give the example. He will finish chanting 16 rounds, takes like 2 hours approximately, and then he will put aside the beads. At least he did that in some occasions, maybe not too many, but Shruta Kirti Prabhu explains that he was personal assistant to Prabhupada, and he saw that in more than one occasion. And Prabhupada will, half jokingly, will say, I have now finished the chanting, I can do any damn thing I want. Meaning, I did my chanting. Of course, he will behave properly and purely and so on. But that was his emphasis. Now I have chanted, I can do any damn thing I want. In one occasion, Srila Prabhupada wanted that some of his senior disciples will stay in India. They were sannyasis and GBCs. Some of them, 2 or 3 of them, the names are not mentioned, I guess for being respectful and not. So they were staying with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada wanted them to help him to develop ISKCON in India. And they didn't want to stay in India. They found it too austere. To go to India for 1 month or 2 months was okay, but to stay living in India and having to deal with all the inconveniences and in those years where this was referring to actually the 70s, during the mid-70s, first part of those years. So life in India was very austere. Now it's much more comfortable. There is air condition and so many things. In those years, there was nothing of that. So they wanted to go back, and there was a big argument between Srila Prabhupada and the disciples. Prabhupada was insisting, I need you here. And they wanted to go back. And then finally, Prabhupada stopped when the argument didn't end. And Prabhupada said, okay, that's fine. Chant Hare Krishna 16 rounds daily. Follow the 4 regulative principles. That's a pure lifestyle. Vegetarian diet and so on. And you can do any damn thing you want. So Prabhupada, even though disciples were not following at some points his instructions, what he was asking from them, but at least he said, at least chant Hare Krishna. Don't stop chanting. It doesn't matter what, chant Hare Krishna. So now we go. So the first point is chant Hare Krishna. Whatever it happens, as much as possible, chant Hare Krishna. This will be the instruction given by Prabhupada. Instruction we find in the Vedas, Vedic scriptures. Hare Nama, Hare Namaiva Kevalam, Kalau Nastyeva Gatiranyata. In the age of Kali, there is no other way. This is what this verse indicates. No other path, no other path, no other path as good or as easy, as suitable. Doesn't mean that nothing else counts. We can do many other spiritual practices that will be helpful. But the point is there is nothing as suitable as chanting the holy name of the Lord, as kirtan-yoga, Sankirtan. So now the question is, how do we chant Hare Krishna? What is clear? No more. 3 stages are given to give us an indication so that we can evaluate where we are at. The first stage is considered the most neophyte stage, and this doesn't depend on time, how long ago one is chanting, but on the quality of the chanting, on how much attention we pay to the chanting. And that is known as the offensive chanting, Namaparada. Offensive means not that Krishna becomes offended, because Krishna is very kind, but means an attitude or a way of doing, in this case, chanting, that will create impediments to our progress. And the result of that type of chanting is stagnation. Stagnation in a spiritual life. Offensive chanting basically means inattentive chanting, or chanting with a mentality which is inappropriate for a spiritual seeker, someone who is seeking spiritual elevation seriously. So that will be, for example, there are, many of you know the list of 10 offenses described in Nectar of Devotion. They are from quoted from Padma Purana, and there are 10 offenses in chanting. One example will be I'm chanting, but then I'm mistreating other people, mistreating devotees, and we could extend it not just devotees. Even we say, even if the Padma Purana says sadhu ninda, to offend spiritually minded people, devotees of the Lord, but that doesn't mean that I can offend any other person, and it's fine. So that will be also an offense to mistreat other persons, because potentially every soul belongs to Krishna, meaning every soul is devotee potentially, and every soul, not potentially, but in fact, belongs to Krishna. So we can, if we offend anyone who is dear to Krishna, that's actually an offense. It is a contradiction. We are asking Krishna, please engage me in your service, and then I am mistreating him, his people. How that can be? So that's an offense. That's an example of behavior which impedes progress in the chanting. Another example very relevant for this book describes later on we will refer to it, the life of Ajamil. And Ajamil was someone who was saved despite having acted in very bad ways during life. He was a person very materialistic, and he had done many bad things. But because at the end of his life, semi-consciously chanted the holy name of the Lord Narayana, he intended to call his son named Narayana. Because of that, he became pure, he became cleansed from all his karmic reactions. And the example is given that because he didn't have an ill intention, he didn't do it like, he didn't say, okay, I am a sinner, I chant, I get clean, I get cleansed from my sins, and now I'm a free person. But he just called the name of God without any pretensions. He just was calling. Even he was not conscious that he was pronouncing the name of God. But because his attitude was a good attitude, an open attitude, he became purified. So another offense will be that I chant and I'm thinking, by chanting I'm purifying myself, and later on I can commit sin again, and then I will chant more and get purified. So that's considered an offense, because it is an improper attitude in chanting. Like also in Christian tradition, in Roman Catholic tradition, there is the practice of confession. So it's the same principle. So I remember when I was a child, I was born in a Roman Catholic family, and sometimes we will do that, go and to the church for confession. I think we did it on Saturdays, if I remember correctly. This is many years ago. And and then I felt purified. Now I am clean. But then I will start doing the same nonsense again. After the Mass on Sunday the Mass, and then I think Sunday afternoon, immediately after. Didn't wait too long to start doing all kinds of things. So that will be considered, this is compared to the bathing of the elephant. The elephant, this example is given in the Bhagavatam, the elephant takes bath very carefully, and after bathing goes out and then takes sand and puts it on its body, goes around or lies on the sand. So in this way, the purification was not really much useful. So these are examples of offensive chanting, and therefore, in order to progress, we are recommended to avoid that type of chanting. The result of it, as mentioned before, is stagnation. We don't move. Yadunandana Swami Maharaj will tell a story of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur when he went on pilgrimage to Jagannath Puri, traveling from Bengal with his son Srila Bhaktisiddhanta when he was a young boy. They were traveling together and they were doing the pilgrimage by walking. So it took them some time, I don't know exactly how much, but 2, 3, 4 weeks traveling. They will walk a certain amount of kilometers per day and then stop in a village, and they will stay in an ashram or a temple during the night and then move on. So one night they reach a village and they wanted to stay at the temple, but there was only a temple in the outside of the village, and they told them don't go there because it's a haunted temple. It's a haunted temple, so how it can be a haunted temple? They went there, it was an abandoned temple, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was chanting. As soon as they arrived, they could see that some strange phenomena was taking place, like noises, and the old windows, broken windows, were moving and making, slapping like paw, paw, paw. Some stones even fell from the top of the temple. And he decided, okay, I'll chant. He was chanting all the time. So he stayed until midnight, he was chanting Hare Krishna. And he didn't stop until all these phenomena stopped. So finished them, they took some rest, and in the morning they started to travel. And then on their way out of the village, somebody asked them, who are you and where did you stay? They mentioned, we stayed in the temple. And they couldn't believe it. They said, oh, nobody stays there. And if somebody tries to stay there, then it's impossible because it's a haunted temple. So the explanation for that, given what was happening there, was that the temple actually was haunted because there was a pujari, the priest. He was chanting, this is how Yadunandana Maharaj will explain it. He was chanting with nama parada, chanting with offenses. And therefore, his mentality, he took birth as a ghost. I mean, he stayed, not took birth, but stayed in the earth as a ghost after he died. And because he had a miserly mentality, an impure mentality, he was one of those people who have the temple to make money and to make a livelihood and so on. So he didn't want anybody to go there. This is my temple, get out of here. So he was making all kinds of noises and so many things. So, but then, even though he was stagnated in his spiritual life, because he had chanted, some effect was there that this gave him sufficient credit to get the association of a pure devotee such as Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who stopped there and who liberated him. By his chanting, Bhaktivinoda Thakur purified the ghost and allowed him to continue progressing to his next stage of spiritual progress, whatever that will be. But he had, so some benefit was, even in the worst type of chanting, there is some benefit. Still, we shouldn't remain there. Otherwise it will be like the wedding party. Some of you will be familiar with this example, analogy given by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Srila Prabhupada will quote it sometimes. There was a wedding party, like in India, weddings are very big many times, sometimes 1 week of celebrations. It's a very important step, so it should be truly celebrated, so that it creates an impression in the couple and they remain together and so on. So there was a wedding party, and during the week they performed different activities. So one of the activities was they had to move, they had kind of a boat, a big boat, like a yacht, but from those days. And they had people who will be rowing the boat to take it to the other side of the river. During the night they had to travel. And all the members of the party, they went to sleep. It was obviously a very big boat. India style, meaning India style, people can sleep in a small place, many people can sleep in India, so you can imagine how it was. So they were rowing all the night, or the workers were rowing all the night. But then, when the morning came, the people woke up. They saw that the boat had not moved an inch. And when they checked what had happened, they saw that they didn't leave the anchor. So they had been working so hard, so we can be chanting Hare Krishna, chanting, but if we don't leave the anchor, that means the anchor of the offenses, or a lifestyle, how we live, how we deal with people, what is our attitude in life. If we are not careful with these things, then we are stagnated, we don't move. Therefore, we need to move to the next stage, which is known as, in Sanskrit, as namabhas. Namabhas means the intermediate stage, sometimes referred to as the shadow stage, or the reflection. It's a reflection of the pure holy name. So, the characteristic of the namabhas stage is that the devotee endeavors to correct, to avoid offenses. So as soon as we are chanting, we become aware that I am not doing it properly, and I pay attention consciously to rectify myself. This is the corrective stage. I'm not doing it purely, I'm not doing it with love, but I intend to correct my chanting. This is namabhas. And the result of namabhas is that awards liberation to the chanter. Moksha, what great yogis, jnanis seek to achieve, is achieved by somebody chanting in namabhas. And this is what happened to Ajamil, that sinful person who had he stole from other people, and he physically harmed other people. He did so many sinful activities, but because he chanted without offense in Namabas, even though it was an unconscious or semi-conscious, he was just calling his son, he became purified, and he was saved from suffering his sinful reactions of all his activities, the activities he performed during life. And therefore, Prabhupada, in the section we read, he was giving the example of Thakur Haridas, how Haridas Thakur, Haridas Thakur said that if somebody chants, even at that stage, shadow stage, not even pure stage, just in the intermediate level, that person will become liberated. And this Brahmana didn't believe him. Gopal Chakravarti was his name, and he became so upset. How you can say something like that? I'll cut off your nose. If I can demonstrate with the scripture, that was the implied meaning. If it becomes proven that this is not true, what you are talking about, that it is a false statement, then you deserve to be punished. And then Haridas Thakur, no need, you don't need to cut off my nose. I'll cut off my nose if this is not true. And actually it's a fact. By chanting Hare Krishna according to scripture, that's a fact. A person becomes liberated. And the classical example, the example is Ajamil. Ajamil, he was just calling his son. But because he didn't have any pretensions, he was just chanting, calling. You can imagine someone dying at the verge of death, almost cannot speak. And he was calling his son who was nearby. How he will call? Will not be very easy for him. He will call Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. Something like that. You can imagine as you like. This is how I see it. Narayana, Narayana. So while calling his son, he actually was chanting the name of God, Narayana. And some mixture of ideas came back to his consciousness. And he remembered the Narayana he was worshipping while he was a young man. So when he remembered, then he remembered God, the Narayana, the real Narayana. And this changed his heart, became transformed. There was something very powerful happened there. The experience of his devotional experience from youth came back. And this immediately, in no time, purified him. To the point where the messengers of death who were coming to punish him couldn't touch him. The Vishnu Dutas, the messengers of Narayana, came and stopped the messengers of death and said, no, you cannot touch this man. This man is pure. And they took the paper from the pocket and big list of sins, all the criminal activities he had performed. He said, oh, this man cannot be pure. Look what he did. And just by the process, but the Vishnu has confirmed that just by chanting, he has chanted without offense, without intending to rectify his offenses, and therefore he is purified. And then this gave him an opportunity to, he didn't die at that moment, and gave him an opportunity to revive his spiritual practices, which he did by going to Haridwar, near the Himalayas, and practicing bhakti yoga. And then in that very lifetime, he went back to the spiritual world, back home, back to Godhead. So the result of chanting in the intermediate stage is purification. Not just purification, but complete purification to the point of moksha, liberation from karma, from all these karmic reactions. And the third level of chanting is described at the end of the section we read, with the verse of Srila Rupa Goswami, where he says, what is there in these two syllables, Krishna, that when we chant this name, we wish we had many tongues to chant. It is so beautiful, so uplifting, that I wish I had many tongues. And then when we listen to the chanting, we wish we had millions of ears to be able to hear the chanting. So this is an example of a devotee who is situated at the level of pure chanting. It's called Shuddha Nama, the pure name, the perfect chanting. And the result of that chanting is prema, pure love of Godhead. And the person cannot stop chanting. When somebody is at that stage, the symptom is that cannot stop chanting. Either externally or internally, like Srila Haridas Thakur. Of course, this is not a stage we can imitate, but it is a stage we can aspire for. It is something we can cherish within our heart. And when we practice, we can meditate. I wish I chant like Rupa Goswami or like Haridas Thakur, that I can chant with love. With so much love that I cannot stop chanting. So these are the three stages of chanting Hare Krishna described by Srila Prabhupada based on the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam and other Bhakti Shastras or scriptures which reveal the essence of the Vedas. And we may reflect on that individually or with our friends on how to improve our chanting. Any comments or questions?
Sounds a little bit like a catch-22, where it says like a catch-22, where you have, if you have pure chanting, then you can develop love of God, and in order to develop love of God, you have to have pure chanting. So the verse that you quoted is actually originally, from Vidagdha Madhava, spoken by Radharani, about how many tongues she wants to have, how many ears she wants to have to listen, and it's kind of like a very high level of Purva Rag that she describes in her conversation with Lalita. So, but it sounds like if you are on a offensive chanting, for example, to go from there to there, it's like, what is the instrument to get from point A to point B? Because it sounds like if you're on point B, then you are able to chant purely. But if you're on point A, you're pretty much stuck. So what's the transition?
Well, therefore there is the intermediate stage, and this is the bridge we need to cross. So it's from inattentive, offensive chanting to pure chanting, we need to cross the bridge of the intermediate stage, the namabhas, and cultivate the desire to chant purely. So the more we practice, the more we chant, the more chances we get to get it right. Like sometimes, I don't know if you are familiar with that argument. This is a very typical argument. Some of you may have heard it, or even some of you may be thinking in this way and acting in this way. Sometimes the argument is, it is better to chant 8 good rounds than 16 bad rounds. Did you hear that argument?
Yeah.
Chanting, so you chant half good than double bad. If we apply the logic, by that logic, it is better to chant 4 good rounds than 8 poor rounds. By the same logic, it is better to chant 1 good round than 4 poor rounds. And by that logic, it is better to chant 1 mantra, good mantra, than 1 poor round. And by that logic, it is better, I'm chanting a poor mantra, so I stop chanting altogether. So that's one approach to it. Another approach is given in the Padma Purana, the verse starting with the line Namapalada Yuktanam, that says that if someone is chanting with offenses, then what should chant constantly. So in order to reverse the process, it is not that I chant less. If I am not very good at doing it, then I should practice more so that I become good. If I don't practice, how will I become good? If the reason why I don't chant more is that I don't do it well, then to do it less, then it's not logical. I should do more in order to become experienced and to be able to improve. And if I do it good, if I do one mantra good, good means you cannot stop. So that means if it's really good, then also defeats, from the other side, defeats the argument that we should chant less good than a lot bad. So the idea is to, of course, it is not just the quantity, like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur will talk about the counting business, referring to the counting of the rounds, that sometimes we are more attentive to the numbers and to the chanting. And then we're moving, and how many rounds left? Still 4 rounds left. Isn't it? It's like doing the gym, moving the beat is like lifting the heavy weight at the gym. So, but the idea is to the way of reversing the process is by practicing. So we go from the offensive stage to the pure stage by practicing chanting, following into the footsteps of the authorities. And that means correcting the offenses. And it takes time, takes training. It can be painstaking sometimes. We go through periods of dryness in the heart. We don't feel like chanting. We feel like giving up chanting. In some cases that may be the situation. Like doing other things but chanting. I can do service, I can ask me anything, but don't ask me to chant japa. Sometimes some people feel like that. Or even devotees who were chanting at some period of their life feel like that. So the advice is never put aside the chanting. I mean in the japa mala or the chanting. No matter what, keep chanting. Also in the Roman Catholic tradition, Santa Teresa of Avila. I was born in Spain, so I'm familiar. I read her works, and she's very, very good in praying. There are many of her teachings are applicable to the chanting of japa, in terms of paying attention and what to meditate on, invoking the mercy of God, depending on God while praying, and so on. And she, in her autobiography, she wrote about how she stopped praying at some point. She was a nun, but she stopped praying as a nun. And then later on in her life, when she became accomplished in praying, and she got a special mercy, a special help from God, that she got very mystical experiences of divine love and even physical transformations and so on. She will write on the order of her superiors in the convent. They ask her, you write your autobiography. We want you to share your experience. So she was doing it based on the order she had received. And then she wrote that her experience is that she will not advise anyone to stop praying no matter what. Even if it's difficult, keep praying, keep chanting. So, as the purpose is to chant, so now we will chant more, chant together. And one very important way, very special way of chanting is doing it together. This is the beauty of the Sankirtan. Sankirtan means getting together to chant. So it may be difficult to chant japa for some or for some, for many, but to chant kirtan is very pleasant, and this will give us a foundation so that we can chant japa individually and improve our chanting of japa. Thank you very much.
Yes, one question. Chanting with the counter, is that not beneficial or not beneficial? For example, has a metal counter.
What do you think?
I think it's not beneficial.
You think it's not?
I think the beads are the authentic thing is the beads. Sometimes some people would just, after driving you.
Oh, you mean while driving? Okay, I mean while driving you can chant, but one should be careful if you want to live a long life. don't concentrate too good, because if you concentrate too good, so one should be careful while driving. But it's good to chant always, even while driving. While Chaitanya Bhagavat says, chant while eating, while sleeping. So chant should go on constantly. We have in the Christian Orthodox tradition the Way of a Pilgrim. Some of you may have read this anonymous book. It's very nice, and the goal is to be able to pray constantly, to say the prayer of Jesus within the heart constantly. So also for us, Kirtaniya Sadahari, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, the goal is that we are able to chant Hare Krishna constantly. But it's true that while driving, it's better to have quality japa, what we count, to do it not while driving. And then we can chant extra while driving, it's not a problem. But regarding to say, and I honor your opinion that it's better to do it with mala, more traditional, and so on, than with the counter, with the metal. I honor your opinion. Still, I will say that according to the Kalishantarana Upanishad, when Brahma told Narada Muni about the chanting of the holy name, and Narada asked him about the rules, he said there are no hard and fast rules. So if for whatever reason somebody is not able to use the mala in a particular circumstance and uses the counter, as long as he chants, I will encourage the person to chant. But I agree with you that it's better to use the mala than the counter. Yes.
This counter has a bad name because the tendency is when devotees use a counter, they're using it when they're driving and when they're doing all kinds of other things. But actually, technically speaking, there's nothing wrong with a counter. If somebody gets up in the morning and chants 16 rounds on a counter with full concentration, there's nothing wrong with chanting on the counter. It's better to chant on with tulsi beads, but Lord Chaitanya chanted on his fingers. But that's the point. Devotees tend to associate a counter with bad chanting. But you don't need to associate a counter. If someone chants 16 good rounds and then the rest of the day goes around with a counter, then what's the problem?
The only problem is that they often don't count properly.
With the counter.
Yes. Because it's mechanical, so sometimes it turns numbers in a different way than it should.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if it's more round. If he's chanting more rounds, more than 16. If he's chanting 16 good rounds and then he's chanting more on the counter.
I'm not expert in counters because I never use it, so I don't know how it feels like and the tricks of. But I know some very senior devotees who use it for particular circumstances. So, and I honor. The most important is to chant, to chant with attention. That's the most important.
It's better to hold tulsi than a piece of metal.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I don't think we will have a disagreement here about that. The disagreement may be in what level, like some devotees will say it's unacceptable, forget it, burn all the counters, some will say. Others will say, well, there are no hard and fast rules, I will say, based on Shastra. And if there is a tension, what's the problem? If for whatever circumstance somebody does it, it's okay, it's Kali Yuga, let's chant Hare Krishna. It's the iron age, so iron for chanting is fine.
We can feed.
Sorry. Can we just move on with the program now? Start the kirtan and.
Yes, thank you. Later on, after the program, during Prasad, I'll be here. If somebody wants to talk about Krishna or about chanting, I'll be available. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Panchatattva Bhagavan ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.